What do we have here, guys? Yes, this is a severed zombie finger. Now, this is my original sculpted design, and I've already made a mold and casted it out of smooth-on polyplastic. Now, we're going to go ahead and detail paint this in this time-lapse video to absolute perfection. And as a spoiler alert, this is a magnet, which is pretty cool. I've been looking forward to creating a long line of magnets here for my Etsy channel, as well as the content on my YouTube. So it's very exciting that I'm starting to roll into these content videos. Now, just be aware that I'm not releasing the actual sculpting of all of these individual magnet designs right away. I may release those later on down the road, but for now, I'm just going to kind of keep these designs to myself and just have fun selling them on Etsy and as well as my website. So if you're looking to get one of these magnets that I've painted here in this overall magnet kind of collection or playlist here on my YouTube channel, just reach out to me and let me know. You'll probably be able to find all of those on my Etsy shop. You can find that also in the link on my YouTube channel. Now, just remember that this is the very sped up version of this. We're really blasting through the beginning of this base coat with a sap green. That is a Winsor & Newton sap green. All of these paints are Winsor & Newton, spoiler alert. And we're going to kind of introduce different colors here on just this little canvas that's wrapped in plastic throughout the process. I thought it'd be easy to kind of just sort of lay out my paints here in front of the camera on this little canvas. Just because it's kind of protected by the plastic, and I can just eventually just tear this away and paint that canvas whenever I get around to it. We're also going to start with a little bit of Naples yellow. I decided to go with Naples yellow instead of a yellow ochre, just to kind of keep things a little bit lighter. And we're just kind of go over where the skin tone and the muscle texture is going to be, as well as the cuticles and the nail itself of the fingernail. So we're going to go ahead and apply a little bit of that to the bone texture going down the insert of the finger there, the torn away section. And then we'll kind of like bring some colors into that as we move on into other layers of paint. I probably will at some point release this in a real-time video, maybe a real-time painting video for my members. When I do become monetized here on YouTube, I probably will open up memberships, and I'll probably make specifically full-length content videos, painting tutorials in depth for those members. So if you want to make sure you like and subscribe, I really do appreciate you guys. Maybe I'll create more content in just a little bit slower down, a little bit easier to follow pace. So if anyone wants to paint in a similar fashion, or even wants to order one of these as a casted item, they can paint one themselves. Kind of interesting. I'm going to give that fingernail a little bit of blood underneath, and we're using a permanent alizarin crimson for that. We'll apply a little bit of water to that just to kind of blend out some of that color. Make sure it kind of it turns into a little pinkish wash, and that kind of gives a little bit of distribution of those colors. Going to now move into a little bit of pink rose, going around the actual muscle tone of the finger. You want to make sure that you give the muscle tone different variations in pink and red, so that way you just create a lot of variation, and it makes the muscle tissue look a lot more realistic. When we come in with later washes, whether it's burnt umber or sepia, it really brings out a lot of life and depth to those muscle textures if you just take the time to put in some nice base layers to begin with. We're going to take a little bit of that Naples yellow along with that permanent alizarin crimson, create a nice light, kind of pelled out pink color, and we're going to kind of go over the bone texture a little bit with that. Look how great that looks just as is. Now this is just the base coat. We're just kind of rolling into some of the colors here. Once we get past the first wash stage, at that point it's really going to start to transform quite a bit into a little bit more of a gory type of zombie finger, which is pretty cool. Now we're going to roll into a little bit of a dry brush here. Now the very first layer was just a pure sap green. Now we're going to introduce a little bit of that Naples yellow. We're going to stick with the same colors, guys. Naples yellow as well as a little bit of sap green, and we're going to do a very nice dry brush. As I start to build up these dry brush layers over these high sculpted ridges and raised edges here, little striations and fingerprints and things like that, the overall wrinkles of the finger as it would curve and twist and change shape. It could be petrified and dried out as on a zombie finger, and you just finally lost that finger, kind of just fell off. But those higher raised colors will kind of put through this wash layer here. So this wash is a burnt umber, and we're going to go ahead and just give this a nice great layer of wash here. And we're just going to let that wash settle into all the nooks and crannies on the fingernail, around the cuticle, as well as all these little divots and the wrinkles around the skin. Give this a really great heat gun touch up here, just to kind of like sap some of that moisture away, so I can kind of lay that down on the plastic and it can kind of dry out of its own volition. I'm gonna apply a little bit more Naples yellow here, kind of bringing just a little bit different colors here. And we're also gonna use, yes, a little bit yellow ochre. I know I said I was gonna use Naples yellow, but I am gonna use a little bit of yellow ochre just to give it a little bit very rich brown and rich mustard yellow color. I really like the yellow ochre just because it kind of gives it just a little bit of a nasty, like decayed look, and it just brings a lot of color and variation to the overall items when you're kind of dinging things out. It's best not to stay always in the same color palette of browns and greens for zombies. Mix it up a little bit. Make sure it's decayed and nasty looking. So what we're going to do here is we're going to kind of touch it up a little bit along the way. I'm making sure to get some paint, blood paint on the actual peeled back muscle texture of the kind of torn skin effect there. Going to keep rolling that paint downward. Now eventually what we're going to do here is we're going to start to introduce a little bit of crimson. Now the crimson is just going to be a lot brighter here, and we're also going to use it kind of sparingly, and then as we work our way through later processes of the final highlights, we'll start to apply even more of that before we roll into a permanent alizarin crimson. Now what we're doing now is I'm using a little bit of sepia. Now sepia is a very powerful brown, and it's almost a dinged out black brown, and kind of like a Van Dyke brown as it were. And we're going to go ahead and use this very sparingly throughout the project here, and we're just going to kind of bring accents to some of those wrinkles and textures around the muscle tissue, any kind of divots that were left with the casting process, little bubbles, things like that will get filled in by this. And then when we clear coat it, all these little textures and dirty washes and little striations that we're using this color to bring accent to, shadows here and there throughout the project, around the edges of the tips of the bone and the recessed exterior of the wrinkled over skin and torn effect. It brings a lot of depth to the overall sculpted item here. So this is a imperative process that I try to incorporate as much as I can, but it does dinge out and darken the entire project. So if you really want to keep it truly light and airy, you would want to kind of probably use a different color other than the sepia, but it's still really cool. Here's that crimson. This is a pure crimson. And I think I misspoke earlier. We're going to be using a cadmium red in a moment. But I've just found that I've been using less and less cadmium or like red hue throughout my painting journey when I do blood, and I've been more so leaning towards the permanent alizarin crimson and just pure crimson. And then I'll just like introduce like browns and a little bit of black and maybe even some purples into that, depending on the overall color combination that I want for those projects. Just giving it a little bit of highlights here and there, just kind of nitpicking over some of that, applying a little bit more Naples yellow to the actual fingernail where it's coming through the actual blood like texture, kind of making it seem like that blood texture is a little bit thinned out there. We're going to go over some of the high raised meat texture with a little bit of another layer of red. Just remember it has all that dark meat texture underneath that as well. So all these are just kind of like bright highlights over the rolled over skin effect. Looking pretty good. Now, as you can see in the background, I've already base coated this with a clear coat, 2 times Rust-Oleum, just 1 layer on each side, just to kind of give it some protective layers. And now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and give it a little base for us to take pictures of. It's just kind of like bonus material for like a UV type of setup for this, and I'm just gonna use it to create some of the thumbnails for Etsy as well as for my YouTube channel. So we're just going to use a little bit of just pure crimson for this. We'll mix this up with the UV resin here. Now just be careful, UV resin in a dark color like red is actually pretty dangerous because it does not want to cure up, so you have to be very stringent about how much paint you add to that UV resin. I think I might also add like another option under my Etsy shop where I'll kind of offer this with a blood drip, so like it'll have like a blood effect like this dripping down from the back of the finger down like the refrigerator, and I thought that'd be kind of cool. So maybe you'll see this another time where I'll just kind of like introduce that as another variant under the same kind of like listing on Etsy. It's just another thing that I could probably sell and just have fun creating in the studio. And it also adds another step to the process of creation. That way I can just intensify the overall project when I'm creating it, and it keeps it from becoming too monotonous and boring. I really do think this little fingers are turning out absolutely great. I'll probably have to paint this a few different ways in the near future. Alrighty, so here's that little base, pretty much cured on the very top, but like I said, the red is very opaque. So when we take this up, it's going to leave like a residue behind, and that's a no-go. Now I'm not selling this little red medallion of what it should be like blood, but I don't want it to be uncured sitting around anywhere, so I will go ahead and add another layer to the back of it, and it will cure all that into place. It's a little bit of a mixture of paint and UV resin. That the UV resin from above did not reach all the way through the item and cured the lower layers. So when you flip it over, you just have a little bit of uncured spot. So now everything through the whole like red like ooze puddle is fully cured, and it's ready to be taken pictures on. So here's the item. We have it all like detail painted to perfection, and don't lie, this thing looks absolutely amazing in every single way. Look at the green texture, and I can do that in different textures too. I can do as an actual realistic skin tones if somebody were interested in that. So we could also do that as well. So if somebody wanted to order something in a specific skin color, they can just reach out to me and let me know, and we'll try to compensate and coordinate, and I'll see what I can do. Right? Look how good that looks. I like the little meat texture with the bone sticking out. Now I've sculpted this a few times in the past for some zombie sculpted tumbler drinkware, but this is the first time that I've actually made a magnet of it, which is pretty cool. I'm really ecstatic with how it turned out, and I do have 2 magnets set inside this. Now, one thing you'll notice about my magnets when I do create these is the magnets are casted into the items, which means they are not a choking hazard, which is very important. Anytime you sell magnets, it's very important to make sure that all those magnets are set away inside the actual casted item. It is imperative. Magnets are very dangerous to children. Make sure you check out the rest of the videos here on my YouTube channel, as well as the magnet creation playlist, which is all of these videos. Maybe one day I'll list all those sculpting videos also, so stay tuned for that. Make sure you like and subscribe, guys. Catch you later. Peace.